Master Sergeant Marissa Kane had seen 20 years of military service, but nothing had prepared her for what appeared on her radar screen that morning. The blips moved faster than any aircraft should, faster than physics should allow. As alarms should have screamed and phones should have rung, an eerie silence filled the control room instead. Something was jamming their communications during America's most vulnerable hour. This wasn't equipment failure. This was war. Before we see how Marissa handles this crisis, I'd love to know where you're watching from today. Drop your state or city in the comments below. It's always amazing to connect with viewers across the world. Now, let's go back to that fateful morning when everything changed. The coffee was still hot when Marissa Kane pushed through the heavy doors of the Joint Air Traffic Control Facility. Dawn hadn't broken yet, but the building hummed with unusual activity. Contractors in civilian clothes crowded around computer terminals, their voices mixing with the steady beep of radar equipment. "Morning, Sergeant Kane." Airman First Class Martinez looked up from a stack of manuals. "They've got us running on backup systems all day. New cybersecurity upgrade." Marissa nodded, setting her thermos on the familiar desk. 20 years of early morning shifts had taught her to read a room quickly. The young technicians looked nervous, hunched over equipment they didn't fully understand. The primary radar console flickered with warning lights. "How long have the backups been running?" she asked. "Since midnight." The contractors said it would be smooth, but... A sharp electronic screech cut through the room. Every screen went dark for 3 seconds, then flickered back to life. One of the contractors, a thin man with wire-rimmed glasses, frantically typed commands into his laptop. "What was that?" Staff Sergeant Williams called from across the room. The contractor wiped sweat from his forehead. "Just a minor glitch. Nothing to worry about." But Marissa was already moving toward the backup radar station. She'd heard that sound before, a system fault that could cascade into total failure. The younger airman stepped aside as she slid into the operator's chair. The screen showed a mess of scattered returns, false echoes bouncing off mountains and buildings. The calibration was completely off. She cracked her knuckles and began typing, her fingers finding the keys from muscle memory. "Sergeant Kane," the contractors said not to touch, Martinez started. "The contractors aren't responsible for air safety right now," Marissa said, not looking up. "We are." She pulled up diagnostic screens that hadn't been updated since the Clinton administration. The backup system was older than some of the airmen in the room, but she knew every circuit and subroutine. Her first assignment had been maintaining equipment just like this. The room grew quiet except for the steady click of her keyboard. She adjusted gain settings, recalibrated distance markers, and fine-tuned the sweep timing. One by one, the false returns disappeared. Clean air traffic patterns emerged on the screen. "There," she said, leaning back. "Now we can actually see what's out there." But something was wrong with what she was seeing. 3 contacts appeared at the edge of the display, moving faster than anything should move. She blinked, thinking her eyes were tired. The contacts remained, tracking northeast at incredible speed. Marissa pulled up the velocity readout. The numbers made no sense. Mach 5. Mach 6. No aircraft could sustain those speeds. She switched to the identification friend ortho system. No transponder signals. The contacts weren't broadcasting any identification codes. "Martinez, come look at this." The young airman hurried over. "What is it?" "Tell me what you see on the velocity display." Martinez squinted at the screen. "That can't be right. Nothing moves that fast." More contacts appeared. 5. 7. All moving in formation, all impossibly fast. Marissa felt a chill run down her spine. She reached for the secure phone to call NORAD. Dead silence. No dial tone. She tried her cell phone. No signal. "Williams," she called. "Are the communication lines working?" "Should be." "Let me check." Williams picked up his phone and shook his head. "Nothing. Maybe it's part of the upgrade. Marissa turned back to the screen. The contacts were maintaining course, heading toward the continental United States. She started calculating intercept times and trajectories, her hands moving automatically across the keyboard. Sergeant Kane, the shift supervisor, Major Stevens, approached her station. The contractors mentioned you were making unauthorized system changes. Sir, we've got multiple unknown contacts moving at hypersonic speeds. I need to report this immediately. Major Stevens glanced at the screen, then back at her. Marissa, you know these old systems. They throw ghost signals all the time, especially during upgrades. The electromagnetic interference from all this new equipment is probably causing false returns. Sir, these aren't false returns. Look at the formation patterns. Look at the consistent velocity readings. I've seen this before. Remember the training exercise last year? We had phantom aircraft showing up all over the place because of a software glitch. Stevens patted her shoulder. Get some coffee. Let the contractors finish their work. Everything will be back to normal by noon. He walked away, leaving Marissa staring at the screen. The contacts continued their relentless approach, invisible to everyone else in the room. Marissa ignored the coffee suggestion and pulled her chair closer to the radar screen. The contacts hadn't disappeared. If anything, they were clearer now, their paths carving precise lines across her display. She opened a new window and began plotting trajectories. Her fingers flew across the keyboard, overlaying flight paths onto a map of the continental United States. The lines converged like arrows pointing at a target. New York, Washington, Los Angeles, Chicago, Houston. Every major population center on the eastern seaboard had at least one incoming track. The western cities showed similar patterns. She counted 14 separate contacts, all maintaining formation, all moving faster than any known aircraft. This is impossible, she whispered, then caught herself. 20 years in the military had taught her that impossible things happened every day. She just had to figure out what she was really looking at. She pulled up the aircraft database and began cross-referencing speeds and altitudes. The State Route 71 Blackbird topped out at Mach 3.3. The newest fighter jets barely reached Mach 2.5 in combat configuration. These contacts were maintaining Mach 6 with no apparent effort. Hypersonic missiles. That was the only explanation. But whose missiles? And why so many? Marissa reached for the red phone, the direct line to NORAD's Cheyenne Mountain complex. She lifted the handset and heard nothing. Not even static. The line was completely dead. She tried the backup communication system. Dead. Her personal cell phone showed no signal bars. Martinez, she called. Have you tried calling anyone outside the base? The young airman pulled out his phone and shook his head. Nothing. I figured it was the mountains messing with the signal. But they weren't in the mountains. The facility sat on flat ground with clear line of sight to 3 cell towers. Marissa felt her chest tighten. Someone didn't want them talking to the outside world. She turned back to the screen and began calculating intercept times. The mathematics were simple but terrifying. The closest contacts would reach their targets in 18 minutes. Maybe less. Sergeant Kane? A quiet voice spoke behind her. She turned to see Technical Sergeant Rodriguez, one of the younger radar operators. He was staring at her screen with wide eyes. You see them too? She asked. Rodriguez nodded slowly. I've been tracking 3 contacts on the western approach. Same speed profile as yours. I thought my equipment was malfunctioning. Show me. Rodriguez led her to his workstation. His screen displayed the same impossible signatures, incoming tracks aimed at the Pacific coast. He'd already plotted trajectories to San Francisco, Seattle, and San Diego. How long have you been watching these? Marissa asked. About 10 minutes. I was afraid to report it because... He gestured helplessly. Because it's crazy. Crazy is our new reality. Marissa pulled up a chair. What's your background? Before the Air Force? Computer science degree. MIT. I specialized in signal processing and electronic warfare. Good. She needed someone who understood both the technology and the implications. Rodriguez, I need you to help me figure out why our communications are down. This isn't coincidence. They moved to a terminal connected to the facility's network infrastructure. Rodriguez's fingers moved quickly across the keyboard, opening diagnostic programs and system logs. The phone should be working, he said. All the hardware checks out fine. But look at this. He pointed to a stream of data scrolling down the screen. The new cybersecurity system is active. It's supposed to protect us from incoming cyber attacks. But it's not just blocking incoming traffic. It's blocking everything outgoing too. Phone calls, internet access, even our military communication protocols. Marissa leaned closer. That's not how security systems work. They're supposed to filter, not block. Exactly. It's like someone designed it to isolate us. Rodriguez pulled up more diagnostic screens. And look at the timing. The communication blackout started exactly when the system upgrade began. The same time our radar contacts appeared. Yes. Someone wanted us blind and silent when these things showed up. Marissa felt pieces clicking together in her mind. The perfectly timed system upgrade. The communication blackout. The hypersonic contacts that somehow avoided detection by other radar stations. She checked her watch. 16 minutes until the first impacts. Rodriguez, can you trace where the cybersecurity commands are coming from? I can try. His fingers flew over the keyboard. The system is responding to remote commands, but the source is encrypted. Wait, there's something here. He opened a new window showing network traffic patterns. Streams of data flowed in complex patterns across the screen. The cybersecurity system isn't just blocking our outgoing communications, Rodriguez said, his voice barely above a whisper. It's actively jamming them. Someone programmed it to keep us from warning anyone about what's coming. Pull up the system logs from last week, Marissa said, her voice tight. I want to see exactly when this upgrade was scheduled. Rodriguez's fingers moved across the keyboard. Lines of code and timestamps filled the screen. Here. The cybersecurity upgrade was scheduled for today at midnight, 3 weeks ago. 3 weeks. Marissa stared at the data. Whoever planned this knew our maintenance schedule better than we did. She thought back to the security briefings, the endless contractor meetings, the discussions about upgrading their cyber defenses. Someone had been listening. Someone on the inside. Can you access the source code for the cybersecurity program? She asked. I can try. It's heavily encrypted, but... Rodriguez paused, his eyes narrowing at the screen. Wait. I recognize some of these programming patterns. Marissa leaned closer. The code looked like gibberish to her, but Rodriguez was studying it like a familiar language. These aren't standard military programming protocols, he said. This is custom work. Very sophisticated. Whoever wrote this knows our systems inside and out. Can you identify the programmer? Rodriguez opened another window and began running comparison programs. Every programmer has a signature style, like handwriting. The way they structure loops, handle error checking, comment their code. He pointed to specific sections. This programmer uses a very distinctive approach to data encryption. I've seen this style before. The comparison program finished running. A name appeared on the screen, David Chen. Marissa felt her blood turn cold. Chen. I know that name. You do? She closed her eyes, remembering. 4 years ago. Military contractor. Brilliant programmer, worked on classified defense systems. He was part of a project developing advanced radar jamming technology. What happened to him? Security investigation. Someone discovered he was copying classified files, taking work home without authorization. He claimed it was just dedication to the job, working extra hours. Marissa opened her eyes. I was part of the team that recommended his discharge. Rodriguez pulled up Chen's personnel file from the archived database. The photo showed a thin man in his 30s with intense dark eyes and a carefully groomed beard. Says here he had access to radar systems, communication protocols, cybersecurity frameworks. Rodriguez scrolled through the file. He knew everything about our infrastructure. And he had a grudge. Marissa studied Chen's photo, remembering the anger in his eyes during the security hearing. He'd accused them of destroying his career over paperwork violations. He swore he'd prove we were wrong about him. Rodriguez continued reading. After his discharge, he disappeared. No employment records, no address on file. It's like he vanished. But he's been watching us. Learning our schedules. Planning this. Marissa checked the radar screen. 14 minutes until impact. Rodriguez, those hypersonic signatures. Can you access the weapons database? Already on it. Rodriguez switched to a classified military database. Searching for vehicles capable of Mach 6 sustained flight. The search returned a single result, Project Quick Strike. Experimental hypersonic missiles developed at the Bonneville Research Facility in Nevada. Project Quick Strike was terminated 8 months ago, Rodriguez read from the file. All prototypes were supposed to be destroyed. Supposed to be? Wait. There's a security report here. Rodriguez opened the attachment. 14 prototype missiles were reported stolen during a transportation incident. The truck convoy was attacked, the guards were killed, and the weapons disappeared. 14 missiles, Marissa whispered. Same number as our radar contacts. The theft was blamed on foreign agents, but the investigation never found the perpetrators. Rodriguez looked up from the screen. What if it wasn't foreign agents? What if Chen organized the theft? Marissa felt the pieces falling into place. Chen's access to classified information. His knowledge of military schedules. His skills in cyber warfare. He's been planning this for years. The security upgrade was his way in. He needed us isolated when the missiles arrived. But why attack American cities? He's American. Some people break when they lose everything. Chen lost his career, his clearance, his future. Maybe he decided if he couldn't serve his country, he'd hurt it instead. Rodriguez turned back to his computer. I'm going to check if other military installations are experiencing similar communication problems. He opened a secure database that monitored the status of defense facilities nationwide. The map showed hundreds of installations across the country, most displaying green status indicators. But scattered across the map were dozens of red warning symbols. Communication failures at Peterson Air Force Base. Blackout at Fort Knox. System malfunctions at Naval Station Norfolk. Rodriguez's voice grew quieter with each report. It's not just us. Military installations across the country are going dark. 8 minutes, Marissa said, staring at the countdown timer she'd started on her screen. In 8 minutes, those missiles hit their targets. Rodriguez looked pale. What do we do? All our normal communication channels are blocked. Marissa stood up and walked to the far wall where old equipment sat covered in dust sheets. She pulled away the coverings, revealing analog radio transmitters that hadn't been used in decades. What's that? Rodriguez asked. Emergency broadcast equipment from the 1980s. These transmitters don't run through the digital network. They're completely analog. She began flipping switches and checking connections. During the Cold War, every military facility had backup communications that couldn't be jammed by enemy technology. The equipment hummed to life. Green lights flickered on control panels that looked ancient compared to their modern computers. Does it still work? Only one way to find out. Marissa grabbed a headset and began tuning frequencies. I need you to help me configure the antenna array. We're going to broadcast on emergency frequencies that every military installation monitors. They worked quickly, Rodriguez following Marissa's instructions to redirect the facility's main communications antenna. She showed him how to bypass the digital switching systems and connect directly to the analog transmitters. Sergeant Kane. Major Stevens' voice cut across the room. What are you doing with that equipment? Sir, I'm preparing an emergency broadcast. We have incoming missiles 8 minutes from impact. Stevens walked over, his face growing red. I told you those are ghost signals. You're about to violate federal communication laws and probably a dozen military regulations. Stand down immediately. Sir, with respect, people are going to die if we don't warn them. People are going to panic if we send out false alarms based on equipment malfunctions. Stevens pointed to the analog radio. That equipment hasn't been certified for use in 20 years. You could cause a national emergency over nothing. Marissa looked at her screen. 7 minutes. Rodriguez, lock the door. Sergeant Kane, that's a direct order. Stevens shouted as Rodriguez moved toward the control room entrance. Sir, in 7 minutes you can court-martial me. Right now, I'm trying to save American lives. Marissa slipped on the headset and began broadcasting. Emergency frequency Alpha 77. This is Master Sergeant Marissa Kane, United States Air Force, broadcasting from Joint Air Traffic Control Facility Designation Tango 41. The room fell silent except for her voice echoing from the radio speakers. Rodriguez had locked the door and was helping her monitor different frequencies. We have 14 confirmed hypersonic missiles inbound to major American cities. Repeat, 14 hypersonic missiles inbound. Impact time in 6 minutes and 30 seconds. Static answered her. She switched frequencies and repeated the message. More static. This is insane, Stevens said. You're ending your career over equipment glitches. Marissa ignored him and continued broadcasting. On her 5th attempt, a voice crackled through the static. Emergency broadcaster, this is Falcon Base. Please identify yourself and your authority for this transmission. Falcon Base, this is Master Sergeant Marissa Kane, service number 2847 to 3951, stationed at Joint Facility Tango 41. I need to speak to your commanding officer immediately. Stand by. Stevens had stopped shouting. Even he could hear the urgency in the radio conversation. A new voice came through the speaker, older and more authoritative. This is Colonel Martinez at Falcon Base. State your emergency. Colonel, we have 14 hypersonic missiles inbound to American cities. Our normal communication systems have been compromised. Impact in 5 minutes and 40 seconds. Silence. Then, Master Sergeant, are you certain of this information? Positive, sir. Radar contact confirmed on multiple systems. Flight paths converge on New York, Washington, Los Angeles, Chicago, and 10 other major cities. Master Sergeant Kane, the colonel said slowly. Is this Marissa Kane? Did you serve at Ramstein Air Base in 2018? Marissa felt her heart jump. Yes, sir. Under General Patterson. I remember you. You discovered the radar malfunction that prevented a mid-air collision. Saved 200 lives. The colonel's voice grew serious. If you say there are missiles incoming, I believe you. We've been experiencing communication problems here too. Stand by. Rodriguez grabbed her arm. Look at the screen. The radar contacts were 4 minutes from their targets. But something else was appearing on the display. New contacts, moving to intercept the incoming missiles. Marissa, the colonel's voice returned. We're launching everything we have. I'm patching you through to NORAD Emergency Command. General Harrison needs to hear this directly from you. Another voice joined the frequency, crisp and commanding. Master Sergeant Kane, this is General Harrison. I understand we have a situation. General Harrison, the missiles are 3 minutes out, Marissa said into the headset. Our interceptors won't reach them in time. We're doing everything we can from here, Sergeant. Stand by for. The radio went dead. Every screen in the control room flickered, then displayed a single message, access denied. He's back, Rodriguez said, his fingers flying over his keyboard. Chen is trying to regain control of our systems. Marissa watched her radar screen go dark. Without their eyes on the incoming missiles, the interceptors would be flying blind. She felt 20 years of training kick in, her mind racing through possibilities. Rodriguez, can we reverse the radar array? What do you mean? Instead of receiving signals, can we transmit? Turn our radar into a giant jamming transmitter? Rodriguez looked up from his battle with Chen's cyber attack. Theoretically, yes. But the power levels would be enormous. We could burn out every circuit in the building. The missiles use GPS guidance combined with inertial navigation. If we jam their guidance systems, they'll lose their targets, Rodriguez finished. But Sergeant, if we overload the array, we'll be broadcasting our exact location. Anyone with the right equipment will know exactly where that interference is coming from. Major Stevens, who had been listening to the radio traffic, stepped forward. How long would it take? Maybe 60 seconds to reconfigure the transmitter. Another 30 to target the right frequency, Rodriguez said. And Chen will try to stop us the entire time. Marissa looked at her watch. 2 minutes until impact. Stevens, I need you to coordinate with General Harrison. Tell him what we're trying to do. Stevens nodded and moved to the backup radio. For the first time since this started, he wasn't arguing with her. Let's do this, Rodriguez said. But if Chen locks us out, he won't. Marissa pulled up the radar array control system. Half the commands were blocked, error messages flashing across the screen. We're going to stay one step ahead of him. She began typing commands faster than she ever had before. For every system Chen locked down, she found a backup pathway. When he blocked her access to the main transmitter, she routed through the emergency broadcast system. When he shut down the primary power controls, she switched to manual overrides that existed only in the facility's original blueprints. He's good, Rodriguez muttered, fighting his own battle on the cybersecurity system. But he doesn't know every backdoor in this old equipment. 60 seconds, Stevens called out. Marissa's screen showed the radar array slowly rotating, pointing toward the incoming missiles. Power levels climbed as she diverted every available amp through the transmitter. Warning lights flashed red across the control panels. Power at 80%, Rodriguez reported. 90. This is going to overload everything. The building's lights dimmed as the radar array drew more electricity than it was designed to handle. Cooling fans roared to life, trying to prevent the equipment from melting. Frequency locked, Marissa announced. Broadcasting targeted interference on GPS navigation bands. Chen's counterattack came immediately. Every computer in the room began displaying error messages. Screens went black, then came back online, then went black again. He's trying to shut down the power grid, Rodriguez shouted over the noise of overloaded equipment. If he cuts our electricity. Manual backup, Marissa said, flipping switches on the old analog control panels. These systems don't need computers. The cyber battle raged around them. Chen would take control of one system, and Rodriguez would shut him out of another. Marissa kept the jamming signal steady, her hands moving between manual controls and keyboard commands. 30 seconds, Stevens called. Smoke began rising from the radar control panels. The smell of burning circuits filled the air. But the jamming signal held steady. He's in the building automation system, Rodriguez warned. He's trying to cut our power at the source. Not if I cut him off first. Marissa found the main power control and switched it to manual operation. Chen may know our computer systems, but he doesn't know the original electrical schematics from 1987. 10 seconds until impact, Stevens announced. On the radar screen, the incoming missiles wavered. Their precise flight paths began to scatter as the GPS jamming took effect. 5 seconds. The missiles broke formation, their guidance systems failing. One by one, they veered off course, their trajectories taking them away from populated areas toward empty desert and ocean. Impact, negative impact, Stevens said, his voice filled with amazement. All missiles have missed their targets. Repeat, all missiles down in unpopulated areas. The control room looked like a tornado had hit it. Smoke hung in the air from burned circuits. Half the computer screens were dark, the other half flickered with error messages. But the radar display still showed clear skies over America's cities. Marissa sat in her chair, suddenly feeling every one of her 43 years. The adrenaline was wearing off, replaced by the weight of what had almost happened. Sergeant Kane. Major Stevens approached with a phone in his hand. FBI wants to debrief you immediately. They're sending a team. She nodded, not trusting her voice yet. 2 hours ago she'd been worried about a routine maintenance shift. Now she was at the center of the biggest domestic terror attack in American history. The FBI team arrived within 30 minutes, followed by military investigators, NSA analysts, and officials whose badges she didn't recognize. They set up a command post in the facility's conference room and began interviewing everyone who had been on duty. Agent Sarah Collins, a sharp-eyed woman in her 40s, led Marissa's debriefing. Tell me about David Chen. How well did you know him? Well enough to recognize his programming style. He was brilliant, but he had problems with authority. When we recommended his security clearance be revoked, he took it personally. Your report from 2021 mentioned concerns about his psychological stability. Marissa remembered the investigation, Chen's angry outbursts during questioning. He believed the military had wronged him. He couldn't accept that his security violations were serious breaches of protocol. Agent Collins took notes as Marissa described Chen's technical capabilities, his access to classified systems, his knowledge of military schedules and protocols. Every detail helped build the case against him. Your intelligence has been invaluable, Collins said after 2 hours of questioning. We've tracked Chen to a warehouse facility outside Las Vegas. The arrest team is moving in now. Through the conference room windows, Marissa could see Rodriguez working at his computer, helping technicians restore the facility's systems. The young sergeant had performed beyond his years during the crisis. Major Stevens appeared in the doorway. Agent Collins, excuse the interruption. Sergeant Kane, I need to speak with you privately. They stepped into the hallway. Stevens looked uncomfortable, like a man preparing to eat his words. Marissa, I owe you an apology. If I had listened to you earlier. You followed protocol, sir. That's what you're supposed to do. Protocol nearly got millions of people killed. Stevens ran his hand through his gray hair. I'm recommending you for the Medal of Honor. Your actions today saved an estimated 2.3 million American lives. The number hit her like a physical blow. 2.3 million people who would have died if Chen's missiles had found their targets. Children, parents, grandparents. An entire generation almost wiped out by one man's anger. Sir, I was just doing my job. No, you weren't. Your job was to monitor radar and follow orders. You went far beyond that. Stevens straightened his shoulders. You made command decisions under impossible circumstances. You took personal responsibility for protecting American lives, even when it meant risking your career. Later that evening, as the investigators packed up their equipment and the facility slowly returned to normal operations, Marissa found Rodriguez working late, studying technical manuals. You should get some rest, she told him. I keep thinking about what happened. How close we came to disaster. Rodriguez looked up from his reading. Sergeant, how did you know to use the old equipment? Most people would have kept trying the digital systems. Marissa pulled up a chair beside him. 20 years ago, when I was your age, an old master sergeant taught me something important. He said new technology is powerful, but it's only as strong as its weakest point. Every digital system has vulnerabilities that someone can exploit. But the analog equipment worked when everything else failed. Because it was simple. No network connections, no remote access, no way for Chen to control it from outside. She pointed to the technical manual Rodriguez was studying. That's not to say we should abandon modern technology. We need both. The new systems give us capabilities our predecessors never dreamed of. But the old ways provide backup when the new ways fail. Rodriguez nodded thoughtfully. Like having multiple layers of defense. Exactly. Today you learn something that no classroom can teach. Innovation isn't about throwing away everything that came before. It's about understanding how old solutions can solve new problems. Master Sergeant Marissa Kane's quick thinking and decades of experience saved millions of American lives that day. If you enjoyed this story of American heroism, please hit that like button and subscribe for more inspiring military stories. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below.